Hello and welcome to the brand new ThyGap podcast. This is me being Brute, and with me is
Bogus Noog.
Bogus. Did you observe I have used the word brand?
Yeah.
Because ThyGap is already a brand.
Oh, yeah.
It's a huge brand. And it's been so long. We do not apologize for the long break for the English podcast that we've taken quite a long sabbatical. And we would love to say that it is due to technical problems. But it was not.
Yeah,
It's
it was
just
not.
like absolute, pure, raw, godly, celestial laziness
Yep.
that we didn't bother to do the episode. That's all.
Yep.
But now we are back, and we are back with a bang, and we are taking up an all new topic for this episode. And today we are going to talk about churning of your ocean. Chai. So bogus. So that's how we represent an ocean moving.
Some great infra in this ocean.
Obviously, it's
Yeah,
like a
yeah.
naval ship
A lot of
with about
facilities.
700 people on it.
Yeah.
It can also be a submarine. So churning of your ocean, an interesting topic. So bogus, let's just dive through our socials, the award-winning socials.
Oh,
Bogus.
yeah.
On Instagram, we are at
@_ThyGap.
Twitter and Vero.
@ThyGap.
And if you have to write an email.
mindthygap@gmail.com.
So, bogus, with that, we'll just straight away dive into the topic. Let us just establish what we mean when we say churning of your ocean.
So what we mean when we say churning of your ocean is we are referring to the original myth, or let's say it's one of the oldest stories
Yeah.
that dates as far back as Sanatan Dharma itself,
Yeah.
which is the myth of the churning of the ocean.
Yeah. We're just going to repeat this about like 74 times.
Yeah. So the reason we want to talk about this story is because as shocking it is, as to how old this story is,
Yeah.
the most surprising thing is there is an encoded blueprint within that story. So the story is full of symbolism and metaphors.
Yeah.
But there is a blueprint within that story which even today throws light on the entire process of, the pursuit of goals in our life and how we should go about pursuing our goals. What is a worthwhile goal in the first place? And
Right.
how do you develop that goal? How do you frame that goal for yourself subjectively? There is so much value and so much juice in this particular story itself.
Right.
You could be excused for not, reading in detail into anything else if this is the only thing that you're going to pick and go. If you're an individual who's looking to evolve or looking to grow as an individual,
Yeah.
and you're looking to make some progress in self-development, this is the story for you.
Yeah.
And just a small disclaimer that we want to give before we go into the story itself is that we're very well aware this is just one version of the story, and there are many different versions of the story. But for the purpose of this episode and to break down the metaphors or the symbolism involved, we're just using one version.
Yeah. So this story basically goes according to the mythology of it. It happened before time. And the premise or the context of the story is fundamentally to explain that this is how existence came into place. But paraphrasing the meaning of it, the churning of the ocean was the incident that fundamentally depicted the principle on which the existence would run or function.
Right.
So just for the benefit of all the audience who are not aware of the story, the stage is yours. Take a deep breath, wash your hair, start off with the story.
So this is the climate when the story is starting out. Basically, there are three worlds, Bhuloka, Swargaloka, Pataloka,
Yeah.
etc. And there are a bunch of Devas who are also demigods, whose king is Lord Indra. And there are Asuras who are from the demon side. And both these rival forces want to exert their influence over all these three worlds. They want to gain dominion. And Devas and Asuras are locked in constant struggle for influence over these three worlds, basically. Now, the king of the Devas, Lord Indra, one fine day, is gifted a garland of flowers by a sage called Durvasa. And sage Durvasa is not to be messed with.
Like he's an OG sage.
He's one of the OGs, and he's also well known for his temperamental issues.
Yeah. Anger issues.
anger issues. So people don't usually, they know not to mess with the guy.
Hmm.
So when he gifted this garland of flowers to Lord Indra, he said it was gifted to him by Apsaras. And so being of celestial origin, that particular garland actually, the flowers were quite fragrant. And so Lord Indra, in humility, decides to adorn the trunk of his elephant, Airavata, with this particular garland. Now, because of the fragrance, the garland starts attracting all kinds of bees, after which the elephant Airavata throws the garland down to get rid of that nuisance. This act of throwing the garland down is taken as a personal insult by sage Durvasa, and he proceeds to curse Indra and the Devas that they would lose influence over the three lokas as a result. They did not treat the gift properly. Now, as an immediate consequence of that, what happens is the Asuras start gaining an upper hold, Brod, over all the three lokas, and so the Devas panic and they approach Lord Vishnu for his intervention.
Like always.
Yeah, pretty much. So Lord Vishnu, in collaboration with Lord Brahma, assigns a task to the Devas and the Asuras, and the task is to obtain Soma, which is the nectar of the gods.
Yeah, and it's also paraphrased as the nectar of immortality.
Yeah.
Amrut. Yeah.
So that is like the ultimate prize. So the angle was that, hey, if you partake of this Soma, basically you'll become immortal, and that will give you everlasting life to achieve your goals. But the task had one particular condition, that the Devas and the Asuras had to work together to churn the ocean of milk, which is called Kshirasagara. You need to churn the ocean of milk to get the Amrut out. Basically, that was the condition. The other condition was Devas and Asuras have to work together, otherwise they would not be able to achieve this task. Now, in order to churn the ocean, the Devas and the Asuras sought the help of the snake Vasuki, who was the king of snakes and who was known to adorn Shiva's head.
Yeah.
They asked for his help because they needed a rope to basically churn. And the caveat was that even King Vasuki would be able to partake of the Soma once it is generated. So then they also needed something to churn with. So a piece of the mountain Meru is broken off, and it's called Mandara. So they have Vasuki coiled around this spike so that they can turn it from either direction to churn the ocean. However, they also needed some kind of a stable base at the bottom that can hold the mountain up, Mount Mandara, while they're churning it. And at this point, Lord Vishnu takes the form of a tortoise and goes at the base of the Mount Mandara so that these people can then churn and, the process can get underway basically. So with all this happening, the Devas and the Asuras now, they start churning the ocean by holding the snake Vasuki. And as they keep churning, they keep churning and churning and churning and churning. And finally, after a while, the first thing that comes out of the ocean is this extremely toxic poison. It's called halahalam. And that poison is said to be so toxic that it destroys creation itself in its path. Once that toxic poison started to spread in the ocean, the Devas and the Asuras were not able to handle that toxicity. They were already seeing some collateral damage because of that. So they immediately invoked the help of Lord Shiva. So Shiva takes mercy on them and he proceeds to scoop up the poison in the ocean with his hands, and then he starts drinking it. Now, as he's drinking it, Parvati comes into the scene and holds Shiva's throat so that the poison only goes until his throat and does not go further into his body. And that's where his throat becomes blue because of the poison. And that's where Shiva gets the name Nilakanta from, which is blue throat. So now that Shiva has intervened and taken care of the poison, the Devas and the Asuras continue churning because their ultimate goal is Soma. So as they churn and keep churning and keep churning, now new things start to come out of the ocean. But this is not the nectar. These are rare, precious gems, wealth beyond imagination. And this causes some distraction among the Devas and the Asuras. Like some of the Devas, some of the Asuras immediately start, pursuing this particular wealth that is generated. But, that is still not the end goal. Soma is what is required. So Devas and the Asuras continue churning. And ultimately, after all this happens, Soma comes out of the ocean. As soon as the nectar comes out of the ocean, now the Devas and the Asuras get into a frantic rush to be the first ones to get their hands on Soma because they don't trust each other. and they both want, Soma first so that they can get the advantage. Now, as this is happening, Devas also go back to Lord Vishnu because at the beginning, they had the same concern. Lord Vishnu, if you say you will give an equal share of the Soma to everyone involved, that includes Asuras also, then that defeats our purpose. That causes concern for us. So Lord Vishnu reassures them at the beginning itself that don't worry, I'll manage the situation in such a way that only you, the Devas, will get the nectar and the Asuras will not. So keeping that promise in mind, the Devas go back to Lord Vishnu panicked again to help and intervene with this situation where Asuras are now gunning for Soma. So Lord Vishnu takes the form of Mohini, who is known to be an enchantress and full of charm and guile. So when she starts dancing in front of the Asuras, they get distracted. And taking advantage of that distraction, the Devas get their hand on the nectar first, and then they partake of it. And that's how they gain an upper edge over the Asuras, and then they regain dominion over the 3 lokas. And that's basically the story of the churning of the ocean.
Quite elaborate, Bogus. And I think you definitely have added an element of boredom into the actually exciting story.
Yeah.
But nevertheless, it's for a purpose.
Yeah.
So I have a simple question, Bogus.
Yeah.
Why did we choose this story? I'm sure there are a lot of mythological stories. Right?
Yeah.
So why this story specifically? Why? Why are we doing this?
Why? Yeah, that is the $1 million question, really, because...
$1 billion question. Million is nothing nowadays.
Because, being in India, we're not short of stories.
Not at all.
And we're not short of grand stories.
Yeah.
We have many of them, each grander than the other. But for some reason, bro, this story, the churning of the ocean, it is something that refuses to go away.
From where?
In the sense that you have a Kurukshetra.
Yeah.
You have a Ramayana. You have a Ravana and what happened there.
Right.
You have all these epic situations and epic storylines. Despite all that, this story never seems to lose its visibility. It has a parallel in like Viking culture. Like they have a similar, story about something like this, which only gives you a clue about how old this really is.
Is it the Epic of Gilgamesh?
No, it's not. No. Gilgamesh is like Noah's Ark.
Yeah.
That's the parallel. And the minute you have mythologies that match somehow, across cultures, that kind of gives you a clue about how old those cultures probably are. For example, the concept of Saptarishis, 7 people, originating civilization, this exists across.
Yeah, right? Even in the Sumerian culture.
In Norse mythology, Sumerian mythology, Egyptian mythology, everywhere you have 7 people.
The 7 magicians, they're depicted different ways.
Even the Aztecs and the Incas and the Mayans, the South American, they have the same thing. So that gives you a clue about how old this story is. That is the one thing that sticks out about this story. That is one of the things. The other thing that sticks out about the story is just the dramatics involved.
The scale.
The scale of this. It's insane to comprehend. The other thing that sticks out about this is...
the Mount Meru.
Randomly, a few years back, I was traveling to a certain destination for which I had to have a layover at Thailand. Suvarnabhumi Airport. I'm walking around, I have crossed security, everything. And I'm walking around in the lobbies of that Suvarnabhumi Airport. Long walkways, right? And what do I see to my shock? Like in the middle, there's like shopping malls all over.
Right.
And there's this long walkways. And in the middle, there's this long art installation. And it's made up of this paper mache, plaster of Paris kind of thing. Yeah. It is the churning of the ocean in Suvarnabhumi Airport.
Right.
Like if you wanted to choose, like we know Thailand has some influence of Hinduism and all that.
Right.
But majority what you see is, Garuda statues or Indra or Rama, Sita.
Right.
This is what you usually come across. But in the airport, all of a sudden I come across an entire huge installation. You have to walk across it.
Right.
And it is the entire scene of the churning of the ocean that they
Is this the one scene or it's like all the different parts of it?
It's like, the mountain is in the middle and the snake is coiling around.
Right.
And the snake is the length of the entire thing.
Got it.
So there's Devas till the end
and
then there's Asuras till this end.
Right.
The scale that they built it, it was not some special occasion or anything like that. out of nowhere, randomly, I see this in the airport, and that just tells me that the genius of the storytellers, right? For them, not only to come up with a story with plot elements, if you can call it that you can never forget because of the scale.
Right.
And then purposely doing that because they're hiding some meaning inside it. Just like how if civilization resets and
What do we rely on?
the new people, they come upon the Egyptian pyramid. At first, they're going to see like, oh, it's weird. Can't make head or tail of this. But then once they start measuring,
Yeah.
then they start learning fractions. They start learning ratios.
Right.
They learn the distance between the earth to the moon and the sun.
Right.
Because all of that is encoded within that pyramid
Right.
and its dimensions. In a similar way, our guys back then, they encoded the formula for, like the purpose of life, or what is the journey going to be when a man starts to embark on a journey of self-development or self-realization or a project that they have or a goal that they have and they want to achieve that goal.
Ikigai.
Yeah, and not just what that process is going to be,
How it's going to be.
how it's going to be, and what traps,
What it takes.
and where you might fail also.
Right.
They're clearly showing you a blueprint that, hey, this is the pattern of the process going to be. If you know this beforehand, it can actually help you a lot navigating that uncertainty that a lot of guys in our society especially go through in their mid to late 20s. That's what, I have in my mind subjectively when I use the word churn, right?
Yeah.
Because for me personally, my mid to late 20s was where it was very uncomfortable for me because
Fat issues.
I found it so hard to make sense of like, who am I as an individual and what do I want to do with my life? Where am I going? Because I had been sleepwalking through my life until then,
Right.
just mimicking and reacting to the external world,
Yeah.
but not bothering about what's going on inside and what do I want to do really? Who am I really? And once I started that exploration, of figuring out what my purpose could be, what could I do, what do I want from my life ultimately, I soon found that process was horribly inconvenient. It was unpleasant through and through.
Right.
And it just kept getting worse and worse and worse. But after having experienced the value of that process and what you get at the end of it, and then realizing what this story was actually about. So I did not know about the story and the secrets and all that beforehand. I came to know it afterwards. But then I was able to correlate with my experience, and even though I could not use it as an advantage beforehand, what that tells me is, first of all, it validates, whatever happened because it fits with that pattern. And then it tells me that the next time you're looking to grow, because growth is a never-ending process, right? The next time, the next step you want to take in your personal growth, you might go through the same thing again.
Yeah.
So knowing the story is giving so much reassurance that, hey, it's going to be shit, but it is worthwhile. And now that you know or you've been through it, the next time you do it, even while it's happening, you can be unfazed and you can still go through to your goal because you know what the formula is, basically.
Yeah.
So what this story achieves is nothing short of what the Egyptian pyramids achieve in the amount of secret knowledge that they are encoding or mimifying into it, basically.
My experience with this story and why I feel it's important is it's the fundamental principle of existence. And like the story itself says. So if you just look at the premise of how the story came into existence or why the story happened, all the elements which are a part of the story, the Devas, the Asuras, Shiva and the snake and the ocean itself, etc., they are the depiction of our existence consistently, right? And we thrive through this existence. So how do we correlate that to us individually?
Today's time.
And the thing that you said that this is the one which stands out, though we have so many stories. The background for me, it was very obvious from the word go. Obviously, there were few people who were mentoring me going through this kind of literature. And they said, see, you need to remember one thing. This story happened even before time itself existed. Which is why you will not hear how long they've churned the ocean.
Right.
Which is why you would not hear what were the celestial positions, what are the astronomical positions. The fact is, because this happened before time itself, And for all you care, time might have been a byproduct of this particular story.
Right.
Time in its own nature will have this quality, right? So everything that came after time will eventually have this process, or if you call this principle, you will have this principle in it. Which is why for me, it is the blueprint, the original principle on which our existence has been built on. You cannot take this out of picture.
Yeah.
You can't tell the story out of context.
Yeah.
It makes sense in any bloody context.
Yeah.
And the sad part, personally, again, it's a subjective opinion, is why isn't this story ingrained into the educational system?
Yeah.
If this can be something that is being ingrained into anyone at a very early age, and I'm just talking about the Indian society because it's an Indian literature.
Yeah.
And if there is some kind of correlation done, if some kind of abridgment done,
Yeah.
and it is added into the educational curriculum, that is when I feel there is a lot more clarity of direction and, all the malice that we go through during teenage and adolescence and all that. I won't say that it will abolish that, but it will ease it up, right? Which is why ThyGap has to do the duty of all the other people who are not doing the duty, which is...
Yeah, say the things that are unsaid.
Yeah, say the things that are unsaid, exactly. So that's the take of both of us individually and collectively as to why we feel this story has to be, what do you call, reignited? I am not getting a word, but like re-emphasized.
Yeah.
Reiterated. Reiterated, right?
Yeah.
Reiterated to the common audience. So even if you have not gone through it, right? At least the very fact that such a story exists, and I'm sure everybody would have heard of this in some form or the other, but we really like push people to go have a decent read about it. Whatever version you get your hands on, go through it, because fundamentally the principle didn't change no matter the version of the story. Maybe the nitty-gritty is here and there, the detailing, the names and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But the overall principle is always intact. So any version of the story, if you get a chance, then go for it and read it.
The point that you made earlier about the fact that this story should actually be integrated into our education system.
Yeah.
You're not the first person I'm hearing it from.
Is it Nehru also?
No, unfortunately not.
Did I touch on a soft nerve there? Please tell me it is Jackie Shroff.
I have a good friend in Australia who used to work here in Hyderabad, and he already got married and he had a kid. And
apologies to him.
Then
condolences.
Because he was at a dead-end job and he did not like what he was doing. He figured that he wanted to take his family and their security to the next level.
Yeah.
So he decided that he would go to Australia on his own, quit his job, save up some money, and then go to Australia on his own and try to make things work there, get a job somehow, get a house so that he can get his wife and child there.
Yeah.
So he went with just 1 year worth of savings, etc. And he just landed there without a plan, without, anything, just the intent. And he went through some real hardships. And to say that would be an understatement, because I don't want to go into detail, but
you already explained his family's tree.
It was a dog's life, a dog's existence.
Yeah.
It was so bad that he had to go some days without food.
Hopeless.
So that phase, he described it as being rock bottom for him.
Yeah.
He felt like he did not know whether he did the right thing or not. Now going back to India and doing a reset was also almost
impossible.
An even more painful prospect, Ultimately, he came out of all that and he managed to make it work for himself, get his family. And now recently when he was here and when he was describing to me, and I just told him about the story, the churning of the ocean.
Yeah.
And I told him this is exactly what it sounds like you went through. And he was shocked when he heard that, because he was like, he said exactly the same thing that you said. Why the fuck don't they cover this in our education system?
Because then the secret will be out. And also then there will be one less episode for ThyGap, I feel.
Because he was like, had I known this before, it might have definitely helped me.
Yeah.
Because
you would make peace with the situation.
Yeah, because now that I have come out of it successfully, we can sit back and talk and reminisce and all that.
Yeah.
But back then I had no luxury. When I was deep down in the pits, anything could have happened.
Yeah. Again, which is what I would like to re-emphasize. It is not a solution to the problems of life. It is not a solution or a hack to get out of problems or tough times.
It's not a shortcut.
It's not a shortcut. It is in a very bad way. It is a sense of reassurance that you are on the right path.
Right.
It's as simple as that. And why that is important is because we don't even know if you're on the right path.
Yeah.
So we need those indications. We are as humans, I think we are victims of being clueless most of the time.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And which is what brings that curiosity of what is there in the future for me.
Exactly.
So just to make sure that we have a high level understanding of how do we identify a right path so that we keep our focus on the right track, this story kind of gives you those indications. Okay, so enough of the bloody setup. I think we spent very little time on the setup. I hope we had more time. But now let's get into the metaphors and symbolisms of the story, Bogus.
Yeah.
So I'm going to pick up the first piece itself,
Yeah.
right? Indra getting the gift from the sage.
The garland. Yeah.
The garland. And I'm not going to go through the whole story, just touching upon it. Gives the garland and adorns it onto his elephant. And the garland is top brass, A-level stuff. So it has attracted all kinds of honeybees or whatever. And it irritated the elephant. So the elephant threw the garland on top. And now he's cursed, saying that how can you disrespect my gift?
Yeah.
So now what is the symbolism or what is the takeaway?
So the subjective takeaway of that, how it translates to today's life is, if you can look at that as a metaphor for wasted talent.
Fantastic phrase. One of my favorite phrases.
So if you were born with, like all of us are, we are born with some latent abilities. We notice from childhood that certain things come more easier to us than other people. Vice versa also applies, where certain things are more easier for them than for you. And you notice this disparity very early on. So all of us, when we know that there are certain talents that we have innately, are we doing anything with those talents? Are those talents finding any sort of expression at all? Or are they lying dormant on their way to be dead? That is the question. Is there any talent which is wasted in you as an individual?
The word I like that you used is expression. Is there any form of expression to this? And I completely agree with that. The biggest problem for us not feeling content or fulfilled on a day-to-day basis, I'm not saying like at the end of the day, is I think we don't get a chance to connect with ourselves. The other way I interpret this is, like you said, yes, we are all gifted in one way or the other. It can be a skill, it can be a trait, it can be, anything.
Yeah.
And most often than not, you will realize about them pretty early.
Yeah.
Right? And then you're obviously lost in the chaos the rat race or the chaos of, your surroundings and all. But at the end of the day, if you can somehow give it some expression, right? And what we mean, and I'm speaking on your behalf because we already discussed this, what we mean by expression is there any way you are executing that skill? May it be a hobby, may it be through a profession.
In the smallest of ways.
Yeah, the measure doesn't matter.
Doesn't have to be monetized.
Yeah. And another thing that I'll also add to that is for you as an individual to be connected to that on a regular basis.
Yeah.
Because if there is anything that can be called natural in you or that can be called a part of you is that natural skill, what you're born with.
Right.
So as much as you're born with your looks and your intelligence and, your persona and stuff like that.
Thank you.
You are also born with a set of skills.
Yeah.
Now, if you want to be connected to them, you need to give it an expression.
Yeah.
And that is also, we have spoken about this in the Measure of Men and so many other episodes, that one of the prerequisites is to be connected with yourself.
Yeah.
Right.
And this part of the story, this metaphor, is actually the wasted talent part, is actually a warning.
Yeah.
The warning is that if you have talents that were, naturally gifted to you from birth, and if you don't use them, this story seems to be hinting that there is a consequence that comes
Absolutely.
with that. So that is something that we need to be careful about.
Yeah, that's the depiction that we take out of it.
Yeah.
Right? That if you don't respect your talent and if you don't embrace your talent, then there is going to be a price tag.
You will pay a price.
Yeah, and it is inevitable.
Yes.
So that's a great start, first of all.
It's something to keep in mind.
Yeah, because for me, this is a controllable.
Yeah.
It's in your hands.
Very much so, yes.
That what you will do with what your skill is. And anybody asking the question, like, maybe I don't know what my natural skill is and all, like, that means that either you're not hearing to people around you properly or you're not hearing to yourself. So you already know what the problem, where you need to start
You're
with.
not observing.
Yeah,
enough.
and you have the idea of what to start with. So that's about it. Okay, now there is a curse. Indra is now become mortal or lost all the power. And the idea is to churn the ocean. Churn the ocean till you get Somras, and that's the goal. And the crux here is there are two teams who are fighting for it.
Yeah.
And you need to work in a synergy.
Yeah.
You can't work independently. Now let's take a pause and break down this book.
The fact that they had to put a condition that the Devas and the Asuras had to work together.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it was not going to happen.
Yeah.
That stands as a metaphor for, as individuals inside, we have positive traits, positive inclinations, and we also have negative inclinations.
Right.
We are made up of both of these.
Right.
But it's very important here for us to take a pause and consider that word negative. Because when we say negative, we don't mean good or evil. We don't mean right or wrong. Think of positive and negative more in terms of like electricity. A positive charge, a negative charge. So when you say positive charge and a negative charge, you don't really say positive charge is good or negative charge is bad.
Yeah, so I'll only put my finger in the positive
Exactly.
charge. That's how I'll get positive energy.
Exactly. You want to get that battery to work, you need to engage both polarities of that battery, basically. So the inner message is that in order to achieve our goals, we need both of our positive traits and our negative traits to be managed or channeled in such a way that gets us to that final goal.
Right.
It would be foolish to think that, only the positive traits are required, the negative traits need to be swept under the carpet or ignored or avoided. It doesn't work that way. So what essentially they mean is, if you have anger within you, then channel that anger, use that anger towards the realization of your goal.
Yeah.
But don't lose your shit. Don't take the anger beyond a certain point to extremes.
Right.
Where it starts damaging you in turn. The same way, if you have pride, use it in a small measure. Like, the measure is important because it's a spectrum.
Correct.
So it's important to what extent you use your pride so that it gets you to your goal, but not too much pride so that you start making wrong decisions.
Yeah.
And get destroyed in the process.
Right. And also a little on, when you gave the electricity example, Bogus, if you look at the graph of how the alternate current flows, if anybody is from the engineering background, they would have been bored to death with this graph where it's a sinusoidal wave.
As I was.
As both of us
As
were.
we were.
Only I was only a little better institute, thanks to the ranks and stuff like that, the hierarchy. But, the depiction of electricity, even on a mathematical graph, is not linear. When we are talking about alternate current, right? It's a sinusoidal wave. And that's exactly what this also means. And the other thing that I want to say in the context of the negative aspect and stuff, it is a matter of perception also.
Yeah.
One part of it is the measure of using it, like the anger or pride or ego or greed.
Yeah.
Take anything that we today from a moral scale call it, this is a bad trait to have.
The 7 sins.
Yeah, the 7 sins, blah, blah, blah. But it's also a matter of application.
Yeah.
Where is it that you would apply them? And how this was explained is, the Asuras were given the head of the snake.
Yeah.
To hold on to in the process of churning. So the snake's poisonous fumes would be, thrown at the Asuras, which is, in a depiction way, that's what deformed them of how they look. Right?
Yeah.
They got the looks because of this act. But it is also a point that you use these traits to tackle certain negative situations.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
So there is a lot of meaning ingrained at a different level. Pictorially, it's up to your imagination how much you want to take out of it.
Like, the only way to cure a poison bite is with poison.
With poison. And this is again where I kind of emphasize, when you're reading the story or when you're going through this, keep an open perception. Right? And at the same time, try to look at the bigger picture. Another thing which we also mentioned in the reading episode, keep going back to the story.
Yeah.
At different stages of your life.
Exactly.
Because as and when you experience different situations and circumstances, the meaning of this story, always keeps getting better and bigger.
Yeah.
So that's another practice that I would suggest, which is keep going back to the story every now and then.
Yeah.
So now the churning process started, Bogus,
Yeah.
right? In the next part, moving on in the story. From here on till the poison comes out, because the churn and churn and churn and churn. And
Yeah.
then finally, like, what nonsense, nothing is happening. There's only froth coming. And then finally, boom, a poison comes out. And everybody's like, what?
There is a metaphor in the mountain that they used, and there's a metaphor for the snake as well. And this story, bro, it blows my mind. Like earlier when you said, think of the bigger picture, right?
Yeah.
I can't think of a short story that has a bigger picture than this.
Yeah.
Like just this mountain and the snake thing
Yeah.
is good enough for a young guy in his early 20s. If he knew this formula, he would save so much time.
Yeah.
All the years that got wasted for us because of lack of mentor figures or lack of proper counseling or whatever.
Right.
If there's a smart young guy in his early 20s now that listens to this metaphor, that's it. Because the metaphor for the mountain, it's called Mandara. And Mandara, broken up, it means mind and string. So stringing your mind along in a line, basically. So what that translates to is focus or concentration or intention over a period of time.
Yeah.
So the mountain is supposed to be intention.
Yeah.
What is your intent towards your overall goal? Then comes the snake. The snake is supposed to be a symbol for desire. So basically, you are required to keep your desires in control. You're supposed to show self-restraint, because when you embark on a project, when you start working towards a particular goal, immediately you might get some distractions. Some desires might tempt you to go off track a little bit. But you have to keep that within restraint, all the while remembering your intention. What was your original intent? So the snake and the mountain basically show that the marriage of intent with discipline, and discipline in the sense, keep your desires under control, consistency of output, process, etc. So the marriage of intention and discipline is all you need. That constant process. And that constant process is like, think of the churn.
Yeah.
Right? The Devas are pulling it one side, the Asuras are pulling it the next side.
Yeah.
Then they're pulling again and then push. There's this push and pull and push and pull. They're like the sinusoidal wave that you mentioned.
Right.
So this is supposed to show that this intent and discipline, this is an everyday thing.
Right.
You keep going in between these two. You keep going this intent with discipline, intent with this every day. And that is the only way you're going to get there.
Right.
So that's basically what I took out of that.
Yeah. So this is where the story becomes really interesting, which is also the reason why I kind of bought in the aspect of perception, or, how you're looking at things. Because, you broke it down from a very individualistic point of view, right? Now, the funny thing for me is when I went through this story or the setup, this story was explained to me from a very, very high level.
Yeah.
And it kind of still makes sense for me as an individual. What was told to me was the Mount Meru is you as an individual, your soul, your mind, like your entity. And the ocean is the all-known or the existence per se.
Right.
Say the nature itself. The snake is what connects you to the whole supernatural setup. And it's a snake that creates the karmic actions. So there are good deeds that you do and there are bad deeds that you do. And you're always oscillating between good and bad deeds. And you keep going through this grind till a point where you become everything. Right? When the Somras comes and, the action stops, like the concept of moksha or enlightenment. Right? And why this is also important for me is it kind of gives an inner purpose for me. It's not just a superficial or it's not a practical sense, but it also kind of pinches your spiritual aspect.
Okay.
If you're able to, like, I'm not saying it's compulsion, but for me subjectively, you kind of see the coded messages in everything else also.
Yeah.
So you take the same kind of setup and put it in a tree or in a park, you kind of start seeing the bigger picture through them.
Right.
And like one of the things that is always there is if you have the art of observing and, being gullible, you can learn anything and everything about the universe or yourself through everything around you.
Yeah, art of observing without judging.
Without judging, right?
Yeah.
So, and this is the infra that we are born with or we play with. This is the rules of engagement from a hardware perspective. So if you understand that blueprint or the wireframe of how we are, and, just to give it a pictorial depiction, And then kind of use fractality into everything. Like take this kind of thing and try to apply in whatever you can make sense of. Then you see that connect. And why I say that is important is, for me, that is the only way you can develop certain traits like empathy, like compassion. And you can either internalize those things to yourself or you can apply it on others.
Yeah. So, Brute, first of all, I want to say you used the word fractality there.
Yeah.
So I just want to shout out to our listeners. If you want us to go more into that particular word or that concept, what we mean by fractality or fractal design, write to us, let us know, and we'll do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a whole
a huge topic
in itself. And that also helps to decode a lot of, things, symbols, etc.
Yeah.
But the other thing I wanted to say was your interpretation of the mountain and the snake, etc. That just goes to underline the greatness of the story for me.
Exactly.
And the greatness of the storytellers.
Right.
Because if you want to take a spiritual or purely spiritual interpretation, it is available for you.
Yeah.
And it still holds true. It still makes sense.
Yeah.
If you want to take a purely practical interpretation out of it, that is also still available for you.
Correct.
And the reason why these two work at the same time is the brilliance of our school of thought or our philosophy, which is, in order to achieve the final self-actualization or whatever, you can either follow the spiritual path or you can follow the complete practical
path. The dharmic path, the practical aspect.
Or you can even achieve it through practical tasks.
Right.
But by doing them in the right spirit and doing them in the right way. So that is again the fractality of,
the story.
The story.
The story itself. Yeah.
Exactly. It's so brilliant. But
and that's the reason I wanted to give the other side of perspective, like my perspective also, because these are not just two aspects. There is so much more you can interpret from the story.
Yeah.
So it's kind of an example that if in between two people, there are two versions of, interpretation. Put 10 people in the room and tell the story. It is very highly possible that there can be 10 interpretations.
They might take something else out of it.
Yeah. And not just that, all of them can be true.
Yeah.
They can be equally true or right. Right. And that's why the story becomes all the more important, and which is why it should be in the bloody educational curriculum.
Yeah.
Now moving on to the next phase, which is the third part of the story, which is, okay, they've churned and churned. They've got the setup right. The mechanics is right. The first output is poison.
And the deadliest poison.
It is like, dude, it's Cobra Thai.
Yeah.
And then they don't know how to deal with this, because this is the first technical success they got, which is basically they got some product out of it. Yeah, some output out of it. And they're like, whoa, this is not what we thought it would come.
Yeah.
So now Shiva comes down and he says, guys, don't worry. Let me handle this. He gulps down the poison and kind of holds it in his throat. Now everybody is like, let's move on and start churning again. Now, this part is a very crucial part. It's actually the bigger part of the story.
Yeah.
This is the time where the story kind of steps away from the basic activity of churning the ocean and kind of focuses a little more on how Shiva deals with the poison.
Yeah.
Right?
Again, from the practical interpretation, let's look at the poison coming out first. And this is no normal poison. In the description, it's said that this is the most toxic poison to exist.
Yeah.
It is poisonous enough to delete creation, basically.
Yeah.
Everything that it's touching, it is completely
It can negate them.
Negating completely.
Yeah.
So, such a deadly poison, in a practical interpretation for our day-to-day lives, when we try to sincerely embark upon a goal, no matter how simple it is, like I want to get physically fit, I want to eat right, I want to sleep right, whatever. As we start doing it, this poison, metaphorically, is what comes up. Like it's one of the first things to come up. And what this poison stands for is, think of it in terms of all the reasons for you to basically stop doing whatever you're doing.
Yeah.
That's what this poison is. Because tomorrow, if I say I want to improve a certain part of myself,
your nose,
and I make a plan and I start working on it, the initial stage is all kinds of reasons for you to stop doing that worthwhile thing.
Yeah.
Start popping up in front of your face. And that is, the practical interpretation of this poison.
Absolutely. It's like anything that will derail you from your mission.
Exactly.
And it can be yourself.
Yeah.
It can be your own chaotic mind or like unwanted thoughts.
Negativity around you.
Yeah. And
people pulling you down.
Uncontrollables, like your father needs you for the business, or you need to support your grandparents with the health. It doesn't matter whether it's a good or bad thing. Again, the beauty is, it's not about whether that is a good thing or a bad thing, as long as it is not allowing you to pursue what you've embarked upon.
Exactly. It's
So,
an obstacle. It's a challenge.
It's a challenge, as simple as that. So for me, Bogus, the best way to approach this is not to sit and judge or evaluate, oh, this is a bad thing, oh, this is a good thing, or, oh, this is a justifiable reason, or this is an unjustifiable reason. That's not the point here, right? It doesn't matter whether it's a rational or an irrational reason. If it has derailed you from what you have set upon doing, that's about it. There's no more conversation.
Yeah.
And I came across a great quote in my first job and kind of stuck to me even today. The moment you enter the office, right behind the reception, there's a whole wall poster where there's a guy climbing a mountain. And then it's written that there are two things in life, reasons and result. And in the next wall, this guy doesn't have legs and he's already peaked the mountain, right? He has like amputated legs and all.
Right.
The next thing that is written is reasons don't matter,
Okay.
And this is exactly, I mean, it directly correlates with that. Like the poison is something that you should overlook and move forward and hope that somebody will help you out.
Yeah. Then, bro, there is the matter of Shiva entering the scene.
Exactly.
Now, in a practical interpretation, again, this is like the saying that we keep hearing: when the student is ready, the master will appear.
Correct. Like how I came into your life.
In your dreams. So,
No, I never came in my dreams, but I came into your life.
no. That also in your dreams.
Stop being vulgar, Bogus, for once.
Right. So, this phase of, where the poison comes out, this is like, in practical interpretation, it is rock bottom. When you start working towards something, things just get more and more negative. Things probably get more and more discouraging.
Yeah, discouraging is a good word.
Yeah.
Negative, I wouldn't say, but discouraging.
You're facing challenges and obstacles.
Yeah.
Like you said, they don't have to be good or bad.
Yeah.
They're just obstacles.
As simple as that.
That's it. So as we keep going through that, then we enter this phase of doubt. Am I ever going to make it to what I wanted to do?
Right.
Am I even on the right path?
Yeah.
Like, am I even worth it? Am I good enough? All this
Your
stuff.
confidence takes a hit.
Yeah.
Everything.
And a lot of people actually do give up at
Right.
this stage.
Right.
The poison coming out.
Yeah.
And for the people who continue to persevere through that stage, because like they say, courage is not the absence of fear.
Yeah.
It is management of fear.
Correct.
Right? So when you have these self-doubts, when you go through these dark phases, which in the West, they have a term for it called the dark night of the soul. Basically, when you're
Why
most
can't they just say Batman of the soul?
No.
So much more colloquial.
when you're most challenged, and that's what they call the dark night of the soul. So for the people who continue to persevere through that phase, because of the faith or belief they have in the goal, in its worth, etc., that is when the master or a mentor or someone would appear who is far more experienced and far more knowledgeable than you are,
Wise.
wise than you are,
Word is wise.
and they help you relieve your burden a little bit
Yeah.
with the benefit of their knowledge.
Or they help you navigate the obstacle.
Yeah.
In this case, for me, how I look at it, Shiva fundamentally helped them navigate through that
Just
obstacle.
facilitated.
Correct.
Yeah.
Right? So that is the juice of the matter. That
He didn't come and say, "Oh, you wanted Soma?
yeah.
Just a sec." And he didn't just
I
pop
had,
it out.
I just had it all the time. Like,
Exactly.
I was just waiting for you to ask.
Yeah. He did not do home delivery.
No,
He
no,
just
no spoon
facilitated.
feeding.
No spoon feeding.
And
at all.
that's another big bloody takeaway.
Yeah.
That there is no spoon feeding. The world doesn't meet you halfway.
Yeah.
You need to go through the grind. There is no exception. All the successful people or anybody you take.
Yeah.
And if you can just forget about the glitter glamour of what they've achieved
Yeah.
and look deeper, you will see what is it that it takes to actually achieve something. And it's not about the measure of how much you have achieved, but at least to achieve something.
Yeah.
So Shiva, in this case, the depiction that we take is that when you have come to a point where metaphorically you've hit rock bottom, then there is always a helping hand which will pull you up. And once again, there is no shape, size, or form of how that help will come.
Yeah.
But it fundamentally definitely gives you a feeling that, okay, I am kind of getting somewhere now. You still don't know where, but you get that feeling, okay, I'm not down anymore. I'm kind of getting up from here.
Yeah. Yeah.
So now Shiva has handled the first obstacle. The beautiful thing is, Bogus, it's not just about this aspect.
Yeah.
Which is why I emphasized earlier that this is one of the pivotal points of the story where the focus goes away from the churning and it kind of goes into detail about how Shiva has handled the poison also.
Yeah.
Now that is beautiful writing. It's
probably my favorite part.
Yeah, it's fantastic. The whole aspect of moving away from the main plot to a side plot, that again is, I think, intentionally done.
Oh, yeah.
Because there is again some decoding to be done even in that side story.
The greatest thing about that is, so in their darkest hour, the master appeared.
Yeah.
And relieved them of that burden by swallowing that deadliest poison.
Correct.
And then that poison is held so that it just stays in the throat and it doesn't go further below that.
Yeah.
In colloquial terms, Brood, we keep stressing upon the importance of, reaction versus response. This is something that we've mentioned in previous episodes also.
Multiple times.
Where, imagine a colloquial situation where you're among a group of friends or, in a social gathering and somebody takes a shot at you in public among people, whose opinions you value. And so they've taken a shot at you, they've done something confrontational, and now it is upon you to handle that situation. Do you lash out immediately? Like, do you react immediately? Or are you aware enough that you don't need to react immediately? That's not your only option. You can also take your time to consider a more potent or a more strategized, successful response.
Right.
There is this character, a fictional character in a book by Ayn Rand. The book is called Fountainhead. A lot of idealistic young people.
Don't read that.
Generally read that book. But there is one character trait. The protagonist is called Howard Rourke, and he's an architect. And he's a guy who has a moral code about whatever he does, and he likes to do things in a pure way. And he doesn't like compromising on his values. But like the story goes, like this churning of the ocean goes also, the minute he starts to try something, he gets all kinds of opposition. People who rather want to make a quick buck, they want to take the shortcut, etc., which this guy does not want to do. So because of that, they are scheming against him and they are causing him some collateral damage.
Right.
So someone close to him asks him, how come this doesn't affect you? These people are doing so many things to make your life a living hell, but it doesn't seem to faze you or affect you at all. What he says is, it does affect me. It does affect me, but I don't let it affect me beyond a certain point.
Yeah.
Because there's no sense in that. It doesn't make any sense to allow them to affect me beyond a certain point.
Yeah.
That's a very strong point which correlates with this holding the poison in the throat, which is all of us human beings are made up of this reptilian reflex that is built into our system. The reflex that we have is because of predators, etc. in olden days.
Process of evolution.
Yeah, it's process of evolution. So we have an immediate reflex reaction, which we cannot control. If I threw something at you, without thinking, without processing, you would duck.
I throw something bigger at you.
And I duck, without even thinking.
Yeah, but I throw it very fast.
I still duck. So
super fast.
What that tells us about how we are made is there are certain things that we cannot avoid. If you look at these contemporary motivational speakers or influencers, etc., when they talk about this stuff, they usually say, don't let the negativity get to you. If you read comments, don't let it affect you. You should never let it bother you, or you should never let someone offend you. Unfortunately, that's the wrong, not just wrong, it is unachievable almost, because we are not made that way. There is no way to escape the sting. If someone says something insulting, and if it is really, potent, then
you're bound to get affected.
You're bound to get stung.
Not just that, the other way of looking at it is, even if you are able to avoid it or a bunch of times, it will get to you.
Yeah. And Shiva taking the poison in and holding it in his throat, which means taking it in to a certain extent, but not beyond that.
Right.
That's what it means. So because we don't seem to know any better, when we are stuck in situations like that, we think we have to go with our reflex response. But that's not really the only option you have. There's a better option. You can give it some time if you want, and you can choose your response on your terms, where it has an even more, potent impact, where the punch lands even harder. But basically, if you give in to your reflex response, then you're giving into the chaos of it all. You're
Right.
giving into the uncertainty. You have very little agency now. You have very little control over how things are going to pan out.
Yeah.
So that kind of take a pause, take 2 seconds, consider what just happened and respond accordingly. That kind of mindset, it doesn't come easy. It doesn't come without practice. And it takes a whole lot of time to even realize, it takes years to realize that this is actually how I should be doing things.
Yeah. And often you're too late to
You're
do
too
something
late.
about it.
You're too late.
Unless you know the story. The way I look at it is twofold focus. One is, face your challenges. The solution is not to run away.
Yeah.
Right? The solution is to persevere.
Yeah.
Right? Like continue what you're going at it and take everything in your stride. If you're strong enough, it can only damage you so much.
Right.
The other thing is similar to how the horror example that you mentioned. One of the things I came across is when you are pursuing something which means something to you,
Yeah.
don't be afraid to be challenged
Yes.
because you will be,
You will be.
right? The thing that you need to learn is like the same concept of courage. Don't be afraid to be challenged. That is also a form of courage, right?
Yeah.
And now that you're not afraid of being challenged, don't try to win the challenger. Don't try to disprove the challenger. Just acknowledge the challenge. And then you take what you want out of it and then go forward. There is no winning or losing against the challenger. Just because somebody questions you doesn't mean that now you have to sit and prove yourself right or prove the other person wrong.
Yeah.
The fact that somebody is challenging you is an indication that you're doing something right. Take it to that point and forget about the remaining debate. It's not even a debate. It's not even a conversation for you. It's just an indicator for you that, okay, if somebody sees that I am worth challenging because I'm threatening something or I am doing something right. Which is again what I connect in the reason for us doing is this is what we don't know when we're going through that grind, right? We don't know what are the right signals.
Yeah.
We don't know what are the indicators that we are on the right path.
Yeah.
So this whole episode of Shiva coming and saying, don't worry, I'll handle it, is a huge thing. And the other aspect is when you face your challenge, once again, help will come.
Yeah.
Because
Provided you keep going.
provided you keep going and provided, you're smart enough about it. And it again is told in how the moon comes and sits on Shiva's head because to cool him down and the Ganga flows, the snake comes and coils around him.
Right.
All these things. So help can come in any shape, size and form. It might not necessarily come from the source that you anticipate.
Yeah.
So keep yourself open.
Yes.
And keep moving forward. That's the takeaway. Now, great. So they keep churning the ocean.
Yep.
And now the real juice comes. All the while, it's just been obvious dangers, obvious hardships.
Yep.
But this is the next level of hardship, which is the gems coming out, the powerful stones coming out.
Treasures.
There are treasures coming out, wealth, glitter, glamour. But the Somras hasn't come out yet.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, this is a different angle of hardship.
This is, yeah.
And this is probably the hardest.
Exactly. That's
right?
exactly
This is
what
the
I was going to say.
hardest form.
Yeah.
So, have you ever experienced this, Bogus? Let me give it a twist. Have you ever experienced this form of hardship?
So let's go into the interpretation first, because, the reason why we say it's a hardship is because in the story itself, the emanation of wealth caused some distraction.
Correct.
Some asuras or some devas did pursue
Yeah.
that particular wealth for selfish reasons.
Right.
Have I ever experienced this in a smaller scale? I can't remember, actually.
Like off the bat on a corporate scale, I think a lot of people come across this.
Yeah.
That one big deal.
Oh, I
do.
remembered, bro.
So obviously, I always you know what I do, Bogus? I sow seeds.
So
And then I can't explain.
I had an opportunity to grow my career
Yeah.
a few years back, but that would mean I had to leave Hyderabad and I'd have to travel the country. And I kind of had already this seed of ThyGap and, what I wanted to do with ThyGap.
With your skill and talent, sitting in one place.
So I knew I had a latent knowing that if I take this offer, I was already working the job to build up a capital and save money for, a venture like ThyGap. So in a way, it would have made sense to take up the offer because I'll get more money and hey,
You'll build more capital.
more
faster.
capital, more savings.
Yeah.
But I kind of knew that I was fooling myself. Like I would be fooling myself if I went with that direction.
Right.
Because the minute I changed a city, then I'd have to handle this so many other distractions like finding a house, managing my food and all that.
Yeah.
All of my energies would be dissipated in those directions.
The luxury of time will no longer be with you.
Exactly. I would just be chasing money and more higher salary, etc.
Right.
Which would take me away from kind of what I wanted to do, which was ThyGap.
Yeah.
So when that situation came, I was a little bit challenged because I knew that if I didn't take up this opportunity, immediately it's going to go to some people that I already
Correct.
know and they would take it up,
Correct.
which is what happened.
Right.
So through my professional experience, I've had juniors reach my position and then go beyond my position also.
Yeah.
Because I did not show the same ambition. Because that would mean, ThyGap not working out probably.
Right.
And that's something I could not take.
Yeah.
But if I would have taken, that's almost like this wealth coming out and
Correct.
that distraction.
Correct. And see, resistance or restraining from luxury,
Yeah,
especially in today's day and age,
Yeah.
one of the most difficult things.
it's really tough.
Especially considering the fact the dopamine immunity that we developed,
Yeah,
the excitement immunity that we developed, the nuclear families that we're living in, where the value of relationship is lost in the clouds.
yeah,
It becomes very, very difficult to pursue something meaningful, whether as a group or as an individual.
yeah.
And once again, it's amazing how it stands true from a story which was said, beyond time.
It will never stop blowing my mind.
Yeah, it's amazing. And that is what we see today, right? Today, we might have eased up our initial struggles. I mean, I'm just taking it as an example, but nepotism or, through some kind of reference or recommendation or something.
Yeah,
You get through the best schools, you get through the best colleges, you get through the best companies.
yeah,
But the real struggle actually starts, in the hindsight, you realize handling the poison was the easy job,
yes.
But
Easier.
easier job.
Yeah,
This is where the difficulty starts.
Oh, yeah.
When you're being offered like fancy packages, all kinds of these things are actually not helping you in pursuing what you want.
and where don't we see this, bro?
Everywhere.
Like a stand-up comic who is, struggling
Correct.
gets into the art form because he believes in the art form and
Right.
he wants to express himself and he wants to grow as a stand-up comic.
Right.
But what happens when that stand-up comic gets material success?
Yeah, they compromise on the bigger picture.
What happens to their material after
And
that?
the other thing is sports people.
Sports people.
And especially with the kind of money that is being pumped into sports.
Exactly.
Right? Forget about, the partiality, all that crap. But one guy plays one IPL season and then you don't get to see him. And that IPL season, you're like, wow, what a talent. Like, this guy should really go a long way.
Yeah. How many examples of sports persons we see where once they get that material success,
Yeah.
it kind of goes to their head and their entire life changes.
We don't know what happens, but they just disappear.
It's almost like they become a different person.
Correct.
That you
Correct.
can't relate with them anymore.
Right.
And that's what money does. And all these rich Hollywood people or the very successful people who even after getting all that wealth and success, like that famous Jim Carrey quote, right?
Yeah.
Everyone
I wish
gets-
everybody can become rich and get what they want so that they know that's not what it is.
Exactly.
Life is not what.
So even after getting to the peaks of material success, these people still look around and like they have a hole in them and they're not able to fill that hole.
Yeah.
They
die of depression.
die of depression,
loneliness.
etc. Yeah. It's because of this, because maybe when they began, they were earnest. Maybe they were sincere. Everyone would be.
Yeah.
But once they achieve that success and get to that material success level,
Yeah.
that is when if they don't control it.
I genuinely want ThyGap to have that problem.
Yes, please.
Please.
Challenge
Come on,
us.
like, put us in a spot.
Somebody throw 2 crores at our face and say challenge.
Each.
Yes.
Each. Please, the star mark. Okay.
Yeah.
But it's a good problem to have
It's a great problem to have.
in today's age. Like, fucking 2 crores is sorted, man.
Yeah.
Fuck this shit.
But if you're not prepared, if you're not mature enough, then it's the worst kind of problem you can have because
You don't even realize you won't know what hit you.
you remember those stories of people who randomly won the lottery
Yes.
and what happened to them after that?
Yes. People who won crore, kaun banega crorepati, guys.
All of their relations
Yeah.
broken,
Spoiled,
damaged,
broken.
beyond repair.
Right.
They became beggars.
Through the money,
In
blow the money.
record time, they became beggars.
Right.
And they lost everything in their life.
Yeah.
which is insane if you think about it.
Yeah, and probably all their lives they would have dreamt of that kind of money.
Exactly. So this story is no joke.
Yeah.
Churning of the ocean. Everything. They've managed to include every damn thing in
I think we have to start a series called It's Not a Joke.
it. Yeah.
After It's Not Easy. Like the obvious transition seems to be like, it's no joke. ThyGap is still not having like the materialistic distractions. It's no joke, guys. It's your responsibility.
Do you have any other interpretation of this wealth, stage?
No, like I think we covered most of it. Because see, it changes from day to day. It changes from age to age, right? Like when you're younger, it might be girls and chicks and like, having that FOMO thing, like being a part of the crowd, which
Right.
kind of pulls you away from who you are.
Right.
Then in the corporate, in your early stages of the career, it is about impressing your hierarchy or your superiors than you kind of sticking to your game and, improving your own, skill or this thing. Later on, I mean, I don't know, but it's about like getting submerged in responsibilities and giving that as a reason that I can't do this, I can't do that, or etc. So again, even in the story, it's gems and stones and like, mythical creatures and all of that. So it has multiple shapes and forms.
Yeah.
These distractions, these luring, seducing aspects will come in any shape and form. It can be yourself also. It just, we don't know it yet.
Yeah. So what is the story, how does the story treat this wealth generation? What does the story have to say about how the wealth needs to be used, ideally? I mean, it doesn't say it explicitly, but what it shows through metaphor is, in the story, the Devas were collecting the wealth so that they could offer it back to Vishnu.
Right.
To say that, ultimately this wealth is yours.
Right.
And so this is the rightful place
Right.
it needs to go to. The Asuras were collecting the wealth for their own gain.
Correct.
That's the difference.
Right.
And now you can sort of understand why Vishnu decides that, no, only the Devas will get
The Soma.
the Soma.
Yeah.
Because compared to the Asuras, whose goals were very self-serving, the Devas' goals were not self-serving at all. They were serving a higher purpose or a different purpose. So now, bro, let's come to that,
The final
the final Soma stage.
the climax of the story.
What do you make of, the Soma coming out after all these stages? And what do you make of basically that final stage?
Ethics. Integrity.
Okay.
If you pursue or conduct your life with a certain amount of integrity, with a certain amount of ethical approach, and again, it's a huge debate of what is ethical, what is unethical, and all that, then you will, like you say, you will make the cake and you will eat the cake.
Yes.
That's the final, that's how I read the climax, where, when Vishnu takes the form of Mohini, and the story goes that he's now dancing to the tune. It's kind of a celebration that, finally you guys have achieved the Somras. So it's kind of a party he conducts and all that. And he carries 2 jugs, one with water or basic some non-Soma, and 1 jug with Soma. And every time, and he's the one who's serving it to both the parties. And
Right.
when he's serving it to the Devas, he's serving the Soma. And for the others, they're
It's the
serving
decoy.
the decoy.
Yeah.
Right. And that for me is a way of looking at the person who genuinely has leveraged the best of his qualities. I'm not saying the negative traits or the best of his qualities to make a worthwhile impact for himself and in turn for others around him, which comprises of integrity to what he does, which comprises of compassion about his own people or, the overall people who are in a part of his journey. Rather.
Yeah.
If you can do that, and if that is what they were able to achieve, that is when you become eligible to actually eat the cake that you made.
Yes. Yeah. And in my subjective interpretation, I correlate this final stage of the story of the Soma with purpose in life. And this, I think, is the most important part of the story, because even though it comes last, it is actually with this purpose that the story began.
Correct.
The story began for Soma.
Right.
And this is the thing that comes out in the very end.
Right.
So what I'm trying to say by that is, without a purpose, well thought out purpose, well considered purpose beforehand, whatever plans we make, whatever goals we make for ourselves, they probably are not well directioned.
Or do we say well articulated?
Well articulated, well directioned. It's haphazard.
Yeah.
It's all gajibuji.
Yeah, it's like castles in the sky.
Yeah, but if you start with a well thought out and well considered purpose, that North Star is what keeps us on track throughout our journey.
Right.
So the Soma coming out at the end, why is that the nectar? Why is that the amrut? Metaphorically speaking, that is purpose and that is the end of all desires. Basically the fulfillment that you get.
I was about to go with that. Yeah.
Yeah, the contentment or fulfillment that you get with Soma. That is exactly what these rich people are crying about. Like, how come I've earned so much money? I still have a hole.
I still have a wife who's cribbing about
Exactly. Why am I still depressed?
Why am I still playing alimony?
Why don't I get, what I really wanted?
Why haven't I subscribed to ThyGap still?
Exactly. We see this happening with content creators also who start off, people love them and they have the love of the people and they get to millions and millions of subscribers. But then you see the personality starts to
deter.
Yeah, a little shaky a little bit.
Yeah.
And then because of the wealth distraction or whatever, we don't see them reaching the point where we thought they would, which is the Soma, you know. So the point of the story is that sense of happiness, fulfillment that everyone is chasing, that comes from some element of selflessness in your actions or in your goal. Some element of selflessness. Because that's why they took great care to mention that the Devas went after the wealth only to return it back to Vishnu. And that, in terms of wealth management, what that is telling in the story is, wealth generation by itself is nothing wrong. There's nothing wrong with it.
Yeah.
But it's also important to have a sense of detachment from that. You don't let that get to your head. It was never yours to begin with.
It has to be treated with a level of indifference.
Yes. Indifference. And this is something I can't even remember how many episodes back we talked about this.
Yeah.
In the Human Trials number 5 episode, actually, where we talked about wealth. Check it out.
And share.
Yeah. So
we are looking to one side of the wall as there are people sitting. Like both of us like, yeah, check it out. Yeah, share. The delusion we live in. There are a bunch of people sitting in the room.
So what do I mean by selflessness? It's so funny, bro. Just a couple of days back, I was watching this influencer's video on YouTube. And he was giving his 5 formulas for success or whatever. Okay. Abridged version, because every year he does this.
Correct.
5 formulas of success.
Keep changing.
He keep changing. One of the formulas he talked about was do some kind of charity. That was his hack.
Right.
And basically what he said was just the feeling of helping people. That is what gives you that, contentment or fulfillment.
Right.
There is some very real juice there. The minute you actually do something compassionate or kind to other people, immediately you
get
something from it.
Right.
So that was his, version. But coming back to the story, what they talk about in service, my interpretation is it has to have some element of selflessness. That's it. It's not about charity. It's not about annadanam, vastradanam. You donate clothes, you donate. It's not just that. That is very cookie cutter kind of version of it. But imagine if you cared about one particular thing. Let's say it was photography. And you wanted to study the art of photography with full earnest. And you wanted to put your own stamp on it. You wanted to explore new, unexplored territories, in photography through your own eyes and your own perspective. When you go into it with such a pure intent, and when you integrate discipline with that, and when you're actually exploring and growing yourself and growing the medium of photography, you are still doing a service to other people. Even if it is budding photographers who come after you and look at your work and get inspired and think, I want to become a photographer, or hey, whatever this person did, maybe there is something inside me which is unique. Maybe I can give that expression.
But are you saying that this has to be done proactively or reactively?
No, I'm just saying that even if you do it unconsciously, as long as you do it with full intent and discipline and you do it with the right mindset, right? That you want to approach it with the scientific method. Like you want to learn more and you want to grow yourself and you want to discover new things and maybe add that to the repository of knowledge, that's good enough. You don't even have to think about, this extra knowledge will benefit other people. You don't even have to think, because without you thinking about it also, it will do that. So you can consciously do service to your fellow human beings, or you can unconsciously do service.
So you're saying that there has to be an element of service
in
your existence.
Yeah. even people who came up with food delivery apps, right? It was a nuisance for us, and they solved a very real problem that we have.
Yeah.
So even if they're making money, even if it's a capitalistic business model, it is still an element of service there.
Got it.
Because they made our lives a little bit easier, a little bit better.
Yeah. So again, for me, it is a debatable topic. There is philanthropy that comes into it.
Yeah.
There is, like you said, some people can interpret as charity. Some people can interpret as, developing their own vicinity or surroundings and stuff like that. So there is no end to this, the interpretations of how you depict service.
Yeah.
The only thing that for the sake of understanding, in an attempt to simplify it, what I look at is the integrity aspect. I give a lot of value to that.
Yeah.
The reason I say integrity is that is the only way where you can be true to yourself.
That's what keeps you grounded.
Correct. And if you go through the journey of this aspect, like dealing the poison, dealing all these distractions and stuff, the only thing that you can do it with is integrity, which is pure. Now, why I add compassion to it is even the Asuras had integrity.
Yes.
But they didn't have compassion. That's how I look at it. And what I mean by compassion in a very simple term is, and it also kind of encompasses the humility part of it, the humility part of it, which is when, like, if anybody comes and knocks at your door, right, and you treat them without any judgment. I think that's my only simplest way of compassion. It's not about whether you call them a black person or a white person or a rich guy or a poor guy, but you treat them without any judgment. And that for me is the easiest definition I can give of compassion. I can't go deep into like, you have to love everybody, all that. I can't. I don't get it. I can't say it. Empathy. I don't infuse anything of that. As long as if I treat you the same way I treat someone else, that for me is compassion. And I'm not treating you because you're a good person or a rich person. I'm treating you because you're a person itself.
Right.
You exist. So imagine that where, you club it with integrity. And that's a huge differentiator. And I think even if you read the literature that followed this story, there is a recurring emphasis given to compassion more than anything else, which is why I feel that's a differentiator. Whether you're successful, you're not successful. And also, it is quite a twisted concept to actually execute.
Okay.
Right? So, which is why I look at it that way. That in itself covers the service aspect of it for me.
Okay.
Right? Again, it's a very subjective thing. I don't differentiate service away from compassion. I think the act of compassion itself is a service, one way or the other. And it can be, again, interpreted and broken down into multiple different ways.
There's many ways of doing service.
Yeah.
And there's a ThyGap example as well. Yeah. There's a couple where we have the Telugu podcast and we have the English podcast.
Correct.
The Telugu podcast is pure entertainment. It's catching on like wildfire. There are many people who are following us now.
Big people. Like, we can't name, they'll kill us, but big people who are following us.
So, in a way, ThyGap Telugu could be lucrative for us.
Yeah.
But still, the service aspect is the entertainment that we're trying to provide.
Correct.
We're trying to give people a laugh and we're trying to help people forget
some part of their
daily troubles or whatever, and have a nice light.
We also hope some point they will forget some part of their bank balance and name it to us.
Yes.
I mean,
that is
being integrity part of
service
it.
on their side.
Yeah. Which is due.
Yeah. Apart from, providing purely entertainment, what we're also doing with ThyGap Telugu is we're bringing transparent, fair critique into how we talk about these
We are
movies.
not shying away from biting the bullet. That's what I would say.
And we are giving credibility where it's due.
Yeah.
That's also very important.
Correct.
So that is ThyGap Telugu. ThyGap English, we realize very easily that the content material is not something that, people would chase after.
Correct.
It is not popcorn entertainment.
Yeah.
So we don't bother about the numbers of this English podcast because it has a completely different purpose. And when you choose that purpose, expecting a lot of followers, a lot of big numbers is foolish.
Correct.
The purpose of this English podcast is completely different.
We have a decent measure of the mileage each individual channel has, and we respect that. We do not try to challenge that in a way. We respect and give its fair due share.
Yeah, and that is to say that if we go through the poison stage, it's not going to change our overall purpose with these two podcasts. If we go through the wealth stage, which is an even bigger distraction, It's not going to change our overall purpose.
It will just change our living circumstances.
That's
little.
about it.
Yeah.
It'll
And it's for
change-
your improvement only. It's so that we can give back more.
It'll change our production value.
Yeah.
It'll change how much more output.
It will change probably our hairstyles, the quality of shampoo we use.
And it could also change, how we help out other budding creators
Yeah.
in the future.
Yeah. If they want our help, that is.
Yeah. So, that's the kind of service that is inculcated in this. The reason why I brought that up is because the fact that we are aware of our purpose beforehand, that is what makes it easier for us to navigate all this bullshit that might come our way.
Yeah.
It will still be horrible when we are deep and down in the middle of it, when we're going through it, but it won't be the end of the world. It won't be.
We know that. I'm still kind of not sure if we know where we are, what our North Star is. We just come, do our job and go back. As long as we don't get the paycheck, we don't know if we're in the right path. Don't digress or don't distract our audience from contributing their part of the service to us, bogus.
No.
Why do you always have to make it so philosophical?
I'm the one making it
You
philosophical.
are making it philosophical. I was trying to.
I'm the one keeping it colloquial in this episode. You're the one taking
Bogus, the
spiritual
only
implication.
thing which is colloquial in you today is the word, you repeating the word colloquial. That's
Okay.
it.
Right.
Okay. It has to show in actions.
Uh-huh.
Anyways, it's been a long day.
Bro, the only thing funny you said in this episode today is the word comedy that you used.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This, again, see, you're just reiterating, you're mimicking my saying. Come up with something original.
I did come up
when
with
will
something
you?
original.
When will you?
That's what I did.
No, you didn't. We can leave it to the audience to judge who did. Anyways, so that is the overall story. Mohini came, distributed, blah, blah, blah. The Devas became immortal and they got back the control.
I would
the
say-
Dream Palace.
Yeah, I would like to suggest a small hack because figuring out your purpose is not a child's play. It's not easy.
Purpose, it's not easy. We've
Purpose
already
is
done
not
that
easy.
for-
We have done it.
We have done
This churning of the episode,
Churning of the episode was really long.
this churning of the ocean story, bro, incorporates how many topics that we've covered. It incorporates integrity. It incorporates
Purpose.
process, purpose, creativity.
Yeah.
It just goes
Conflict.
on and on. The list, it just
Yeah.
goes on and on.
Yeah.
Even measure of man.
Measure of man.
Measure of man.
Integrity. Oh, you already said.
Yeah. Now who's copying?
Boundaries.
Who? Yeah.
Boundaries.
Boundaries.
Come on.
But yeah, the hack I would suggest, to come up with a purpose, to at least have an idea that your purpose might be in the right place, is if you've come up with a draft statement of what your purpose is going to be or what your purpose is, evaluate it to see if it is completely self-serving or if there's any element of that, when scaled up, it could end up helping other people apart from you as well. If you find out that this is, yes, completely self-serving, then your purpose is half-baked. It is not there yet.
Yeah. Or just read Ikigai.
Yeah, try that out also.
Yeah. So great conversation, Bogus. It's been prolonged, elaborate, and detailed, which are all good things. And that's what we set out to achieve with this, because we had to prep a lot.
Yeah, and
for this episode, it was not easy.
even if we take a gap, we want to make sure that when we do make an episode in the English podcast,
Yeah.
that
We try to reach as close to perfection as
we're delivering the
brute.
goods, basically. Yeah.
Have we done preparation? It's not easy. We have not done.
No, we've not done that.
We have to do that. So great. So once again, if you have read this story, The Churning of the Ocean, or if you have not, then definitely we suggest you go read it. And if you did, do you have any other interpretations than what we have already expressed in this particular episode? And if you do have, then do write to us on our award-winning socials. Bogus, let's quickly run through them. Instagram,
@_ThyGap,
Twitter and Vero.
@ThyGap,
And our email is
mindthygap@gmail.com.
simple and sweet, guys. Simple and sweet. So with that, Bogus, we end our episode of The Churning of Your Ocean. ThyGap Podcast. Subscribe.
And share.
Share it.
Churn. Churn, baby, churn.